Hey, it's me, Kathy. It's time for one last Thanksgiving side dish. Back in the day when I made Thanksgiving dinner for lots and lots of customers, one of my favorite side dishes was scalloped potatoes. And the recipe that I use is based on the very old cookbook, The Joy of Cooking, which when I started to learn to cook, referred to it as the Bible. And it's not exactly, and it's especially not exactly today because I'm going to mix layers of potatoes in with layers of butternut squash, and we're going to do it, and it's going to be really fun. And happy Thanksgiving. We are going to start with a buttered casserole dish, and these are our sliced potatoes and our sliced butternut squash. And I'm making this up as I go, so just bear with me and hopefully it'll come out good, and let's go. We're going to start with a layer of potatoes slightly overlapping in a single layer. And these potatoes were a lot smaller than the ones I expected to get in my Misfits Market box for this dish, so I had to do the best I could with them. I had to put a few in the middle just to fill in the gaps. So next thing, we're going to just sprinkle these with some salt and pepper. And we're going to drop down some dollops of butter all over them. Come on, baby. Next comes a sprinkle of all-purpose flour. And this is our first layer. Potatoes, salt, pepper, butter, flour. Our next layer will be butternut squash. And some of these pieces didn't have any seeds in them, but some of them did, so we're just going to overlap them like that. Layer them in. Okay, our layer of butternut squash is down. We're going to repeat with the same, well, almost the same, salt and pepper. And some butter. And because this is butternut squash, the butternut squash layers, I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of brown sugar, just a little bit. Give it a tiny little splash of sweetness. And then our flour. The butter and the flour are going to incorporate with the cream we're going to add at the end and make our cream sauce for these scalloped potatoes. Now, ordinarily in scalloped potatoes, you want to incorporate very thinly sliced onions in your layers. But I didn't have a white onion today, so what we're going to do is we're going to sprinkle. I have some of these freeze-dried onions, and this is going to give it the flavor that it needs, and it'll bake up into the sauce. It might actually be better than onion strings. So that's going in, and now comes our next layer. Potatoes are down. I'm going to press to make sure that these layers are flat on top of each other, and then we're going to repeat the salt, pepper, butter, flour process. We are now ready for another layer of butternut. And we get our little half moons going. Okay, next layer of butternut is down. Salt and pepper. And some of these freeze-dried onions. I don't want that many. And now we'll continue with the butter and the flour. This is our last butternut layer, and as you can see on top, I sprinkled some brown sugar on that too for a little added sweetness. Now the last thing that goes on are the rest of our white potatoes, and then we're going to finish it up. Final layer of potatoes is on. We're going to press down again, make them flat. And this final layer, we don't need any more of the flour and butter, but I am going to use a little salt and pepper. And because I'm an onion girl, I'm going to put some more of these freeze-dried onions on here. And next thing we're gonna do is add our cream. All I had in the house was half and half, but that'll work. So you just pour this down over the whole top of this. I always used to use heavy cream back in the day, but like I say, between the flour and the butter and the absorption of the potatoes, this half and half should work out nice. And just when you begin to see the cream float to the top, that's where you stop. And now we're going to cover this guy and bake it for about an hour. I have a personal thing about foil touching my food, so I always separate my food from my foil with parchment. So that's going down first. And in our foil. Seal that up nice. And in we go. Our hour is up. And here's what our scalloped potatoes and butternut squash look like. And we're going to test it. A little bit of resistance still. They're not quite cooked through. But I'm going to take this time to remove the foil and top this with some crushed Ritz cracker. You can use butter or olive oil spray or whatever you like. I'm just going to use regular old non-stick cooking spray, and that will help these crumbs to get nice and brown and roll them all over the plate. And now we're going back in for probably another 15-20 minutes or so. Our scalloped butternut squash and potatoes is out of the oven and still seems a little bit wet, but the potatoes will continue to absorb. And we're going to test now to see if they're done. Oh yeah, right and smoothly. These potatoes and butternut squash are cooked. We're going to let this rest for a little while, and I'm going to serve it up. I removed a slice and put it on a plate. We're going to look at that in a minute, but I wanted to show you all how creamy, and you can see the butternut squash in there and how creamy it is. And the potatoes have absorbed everything nicely. And here's what it looks like on our plate. On this side, you can see some of the butternut squash color coming through. And here too. And now we're going to set her down and say thank you for joining me for our final Thanksgiving side. We'll be doing more stuff as Christmas approaches too. Here we have our creamy scalloped butternut and potatoes. And we're going to take us a bite. It came out so good. Savory, sweet, and creamy. And it just took my scalloped potatoes to the next level. And I love to try new things, and I hope you do too. And happy Thanksgiving.